Hey, it's Charlie at Charlie Slybox, and today I have a very special treat and an announcement for y'all. Um, December 7th, 2024 is the 20th anniversary of Charlie Slybox. And I'll say that it does not feel like it's been 20 years, but it sort of snuck up on us, and here we are, 20 years old, and probably the oldest continuously owned by the same person fly shop in Denver, which I'm pretty proud of. We've got a great staff here, and we've come a long way over those 20 years, and we're going to have a little party on December 20th, or I'm sorry, December 7th, for our 20-year anniversary. And to that, we thought we might invite a special guest to come down and tie for us and just sort of regale us with his effervescent personality. And if you know the fly in my vise, you might know who that guy is. Yep, you got it. Kelly Galloup is going to come down to Charlie Slybox on December 7th, 2024. So I know this video is going to be up for a long time because I'm about to tie you this sex dungeon. But December 7th, 2024 is our 20th anniversary, and that is the day that Kelly will be here. He's going to do a couple tying demos, sign some books, hang out and be cool, which is not a stretch for him at all. And we are happy as can be that he's going to come down and spend the day with us for this very special occasion. So with that, I'm going to tie a sex dungeon just in honor of that. And I am certain that by the time December 7th rolls around, Kelly will get here and explain to me what I did wrong on this. So that being said, I promise that this won't take 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 35 seconds like Kelly's Sex Dungeon video. So I'm going to try to go through a little quicker. You might hear in the background, that's Pearl, the new shop dog out there barking. I don't know if you can hear her, but hopefully that's not going to be too disruptive. But with that being said, mark your calendar, December 7th, and make sure you're here. I'm going to start to whip up this sex dungeon. You know, this is a streamer fly that sort of set the bar for everything going forward from there. Kelly is obviously the streamer guy, and he's a great guy. We've had a good relationship over the years. Honestly, one of the nicest people in the industry that I've ever met. Just a really good human being, and I'm proud to know him, and I'm even happier that he's coming down to see us all. So make sure you show up, and we might have a few sales and things like that. It's actually going to be a huge day, so you all should mark your calendars, make sure you're here. So with that, I'm going to start on Kelly Gallup's Sex Dungeon. And I'm going to drape that little rubber band out of the way. And I've got a few variations on the theme, just mattering what was on hand. What I've got here is a Umpqua X Series XT350 hook. And for the back hook, I'm going to use a size 4. I don't like to tie these gigantic. So I'm going to do a size 2 and a size 4. So size 2 for the front hook, size 4 for the rear hook. And as I start the thread here, I've got some 6/0 olive thread, 6/0 olive unithread. I'm going to start it at the index point, about an eye length back from the hook eye. And I'm going to run back all the way to the bend. I just want to get a good dressing on that hook shank to start with. And I know this is scanned out a little bit bigger than usual, but this fly is going to grow as I tie here. And then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take an olive marabou feather, and I'm having a little luxury of mixing and matching this a little bit, taking some liberties with it. I'm going to take this olive marabou feather and I'm going to measure it about a shank length long here on this back hook. And I'll pinch it in place and tie it down at the bend. One of the things is I tied one fly here to sort of warm up for this. I haven't tied a sex dungeon in 100 years, but I tied one fly and it struck me. I watched Kelly's video, and it struck me how similar the dungeon and the ganga are, and developed independently of each other and sort of fish, not sort of, but they do fish very differently, different applications for sure. But felt pretty familiar to me as I was tying. So we're going to put an olive marabou feather in there, and obviously you could tie these in whatever color you want. And then I'm going to take, and this is not an official color scheme, I'm just kind of using what I've got, but I'm going to take some gold Flashabou. I'm going to tie it in at the center of its length, and then fold it back. Tangle that up as best I can. What is happening here? what are we even doing, as Max would say. All right, that's a little more like it. Then what I like to do is lift those butt ends and bring my thread back up to just short of my starting point and tie those butt ends down again. That'll help build some bulk on the hook so I don't have to use 10 pounds of dubbing when I get there. And then just cross hatch back over that. And then for the top of the tail, I'm going to use one of these MFC barred Marabou feathers. This is an olive and brown barred, but obviously whatever color you like. And I just cut the tip out of that, and I'm going to bundle that up, and I'm going to measure it to the same length, set it right in on top, pinch it down in place, and repeat that same process. Cut that remaining butt end out. Now this fly, as opposed to the Ganga, has got rubber legs tied in here, or Sili legs tied in at the front. So you want to make sure that you leave yourself enough room there to do that. So I make sure I've got that index point up there behind the hook eye. And then the flash, I'm going to go just a touch longer than the Marabou and trim that out. So we've got flash in the middle. Now I'm going to take a piece of wire, and this is Brassie sized. I'm using black because it was handy on my desk. It's not hardly going to show at all, so it really doesn't matter. And I'm going to tie this in at the bend. The first half of this fly is really just a woolly bugger, so nothing fancy there. So I've just tied in that piece of wire, and then I'm going to dub the body. Now, watching Kelly's video, he does a dubbing loop here. I like to do direct dubbing, and this is olive brown ice dubbing that I'm using here. Direct dubbing just goes faster. It doesn't take the extra step of building the dubbing loop and making sure you have the right amount. And the way direct dubbing works, and this is going to show pretty well here on this wide screen, is I'm going to take that clump of dubbing, and I've just started one corner and got it tightened down pretty well. And I'm going to start to wrap, and once that dubbing starts to go around the hook, it will start to feed from the clump. So I can work forward fairly wide spirals. I don't want to fatten this up too much. Fairly wide spirals right up to the end of that Marabou and end with bare thread in that index point. So you can see I just built a big shaggy body pretty darn quickly, much faster than I would do it with a dubbing loop, and you've seen me do that on other flies as well. So now for the back hackle, or the hackle on this back hook, I've got a few Schlappen feathers. I'm going to use this one. So you want a Schlappen feather with some fluff here at the bottom. And I'm going to trim that out where the stem is still thin enough to wrap. And I like to strip just a little bit of that stem so that I can catch this. Let me back up here. I'm going to make a few turns of thread there in that index point so I'm not tying to bare metal. And I'm going to anchor that down good and tight there. And I'm going to palmer this feather from front to back, but I'm going to get one whole turn, maybe even two, depending on how much fluff I've got there at the base of the feather. And then I'll start to spiral and palmer this feather back. And then what I'll do is kind of fluff that hackle up. That Schlappen is really webby, so it wants to stick together, but I want to fluff that up a bit. And then I'll come in and grab my wire, and I'll catch the tip with the wire. And I'm just going to spiral the wire forward at the same angle. And that way I won't trap everything as I come forward. You can see as you get toward some of that longer stuff at the front, you might catch some. Wet your fingers a bit, you can sweep that back out of the way. And then I'll catch that wire there at the front with a few turns and helicopter that end. Save that piece of wire, that'll still be good for the front half of the fly. I'm going to come in and trim out the tip of that Schlappen feather. I always like to squeeze that stem down a bit, but you can see that's built a fair bit of volume on that fly without a whole lot of bulk. So really a fancy woolly bugger so far, nothing too crazy. Now I'm going to take 3 strands of, specifically these are, let me find the package. Where did the package go? I don't know where the package went. These are Sili legs, and they are olive and green. I don't know what exact color they are. I don't know. We'll put it in the recipe somewhere. But I'm going to tie these in here, here behind the eye. And what I like to do is catch them at the center of their length and let the first half sort of roll to the far side of the hook, and then I'll pull the other half toward my near side of the hook and capture it there, and then build a thread head over it. But before you get carried away, make sure that they're on the sides. Kind of pull those down to the sides so that they're split out to the sides of the hook like so. I'm pretty happy with those. And then I like to clip them back in my material spring so they stay out of my way. And then I'm just going to build a clean little thread head here to anchor this all down and just finish the fly off nicely. And then I'll whip finish. Not a bad idea to add a little shot of head cement. And I don't seem to have any head cement on my desk, so I'm going to use some hard as hull penetrator, which is thin hard as hull. Just coat that head up nice and neat. And I know, I've watched the same video that you did, so I know that Kelly uses Nano Silk gel spun thread to tie this, but I only like gel spun for deer hair work. I don't really care for it tying other stuff because it is so slick, so I like that 6/0 uni. It's a nice textured thread. So I'm going to take that out of the vise and set it aside for the moment. We'll let that sit over here to dry. And then I'll put in my vise a size 2 XT350. And I'll start my thread just behind the hook eye here. And I'll run a thread base, a third or so of the hook shank, and then back up. And I'm going to grab some large size lead eyes on these bigger flies. The sample fly that I had sitting there, like so, has got medium sized lead eyes on it. And honestly, medium sized lead eyes are about as big as I like to cast. But Kelly's a big, strong guy, and he can throw these full size dungeons with the large size lead eyes. So in deference to that, I'm going to tie this one with large size lead eyes. So what I'm going to do is about an eye width back from the hook eye is where I'm going to set these in. And I'll put them in. You can put them in on top of the hook, or you can turn the hook over. I'm going to go 3 or 4 turns one way, and then 3 or 4 turns the other way on top of the hook. I'm not really worried about them being super anchored. Then I can twist them to the bottom side of the shank so that they're on the underside of the hook. And at this point, I'll come in and make the wraps to really anchor these down tightly. And you do want to make sure that they're centered on the hook. So I'm going to go 8 or 10 turns each direction, and then 8 or 10 turns back the other direction. And I'll just repeat that process back and forth very tight, as tightly as I can, to anchor those eyes in place. Now I like to make some parachute wraps, and with these eyes being on the underside of the hook, it's a little bit different, but those wraps go between the eyes and the hook shank to tighten those wraps down, and that'll anchor things down. You do want to make sure that those are square on the hook. Oftentimes I'll take the hook out of the vise, set it on my tabletop, and make sure that that hook is pointing straight up, just something to level it by. And I know you didn't see that, but hey, maybe Kelly will show you a trick when he's here on December 7th at Charlie's Fly Box. Ask him about that. I bet he's got a trick. So now I'm going to continue this thread all the way back to the bend. I said all the way back to the bend. And when I get there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in a piece of, this is Senyo trailer hook wire. So I'm going to run my thread back up to just short of the eyes, and I do this a little differently than Kelly does. I'm going to anchor this down sort of on the top far quadrant of the hook all the way back to the bend, and you can see I left a little tag sticking out the front here. And then I'm going to take a 3D bead. This is an olive, full-size olive 3D bead, just a single one. And then I will take the first half of my fly and thread that wire through the eye of it and back through the bead. Now, if you get here, and sometimes this happens, if you've got some weird twist in your wire where you can't get your backfly to track straight, you can't get the loop to line up straight, if you roll this into this wire, you can see as I roll it, it'll flip this loop back here. If you roll the end of that wire, I like that loop to be about the size of the hook eye. And you can anchor that down with 2 or 3 turns, and I want that on my near quadrant. And then you can kind of drag that down to length. And then I'll come forward over that stub end, trying to keep it along that near side. And as you work up the shank, it really doesn't matter if that sort of crawls to the top. We just want to keep those side by side parallel to each other there back at the bend. Now what I like to do is come in and I'll cut these stub ends a little shorter. And I'll fold them back and wrap back over them with the thread, like so. Here we go. That's all going to get buried in the body, and that is a very secure connection. Kelly takes the wire up around the eyes and anchors it down again on the bottom. Kelly catches a lot bigger fish than I do, so I don't really have to worry about how strong that connection is. This one is plenty strong for me. But if you're going to catch big fish, you should probably listen to Kelly. It seems like he's caught maybe a few big fish. I don't know. Maybe he just talks a good story. It's hard to tell. The only way you could tell is if you came here to Charlie's Fly Box on December 7th and saw Kelly Galloup, which is highly recommended. I'm looking forward to that. And honestly, I don't look forward to anything. I think it's going to be a great day. So you saw I just took that rubber band that I had around my vise and pin that back hook kind of back out of the way. That'll keep it from stabbing me during the rest of the tying process. And at this point, I'll come in with a little super glue. This is just some Zap A Gap. And I'm going to coat that connection. And while I'm at it, I'm going to coat the lead eyes as well. Or the wraps on the lead eyes, I should say. And then I like to use, let me find a cruddy little feather. God, that's not a terrible feather. I like to use a feather or whatever you got handy on your desk to kind of wipe off the excess. At some point I will end up with this stuck to my fingers, so we'll try to avoid that as best we can, but I'm going to run back to the bend again. And at this point I'm going to take 3 or 4 strands of gold Flashabou. This is 1/100th micro Flashabou is what I'm using here. And I've probably got more. Gosh, I got a lot more than 3 or 4 strands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 8 or 9. At any rate, I'm going to tie this in at the center of its length and wrap back over along the far side of the hook and then over the near side of the hook. And then I kind of spread that out. You can kind of pull it under your thread wraps and get it to encompass that bead. And you can see how it sort of flares out around that hackle. And now we're going to put a little tuft here in between the 2 flies. So you can use Marabou here, or just because it matches so nicely, if you use the fluff off of another Schlappen feather, it works super nicely. So I'm going to take a little clump of this and peel it off, sort of bundle this up, and I'll put 1 clump in along the far side. And I want it to go, halfway up the collar there. So I'll catch that on the far side of the hook. And that's just going to cover that junction. I'll take another clump here on the near side, match the length, and anchor it down, like so. And then, I know in Kelly's videos, I just thought of this, Kelly put a little Marabou wing on the back of that back hook. I think that's not the official pattern, but that is what he did on the one in his video. So just to be different, I didn't do it, and that was entirely by design. It's not because I forgot to do it, so don't go thinking that I forgot, because I didn't forget. Now I'm going to take another one of those barred feathers and bunch it up and put it on top. So you can kind of see our color variation carrying through. And I'll lift those butt ends up on that longer feather. Excuse me. And I'll tie it off just short of where we tied off the wire. And come in and cut those butt ends out. And palmer back over, or wrap back over it. So you can kind of see the hackle-like collar we just built at the back end there. All right, so I'm going to pick up that same piece of wire. I've got 5-6 inches of it here. I'm going to tie this in here at the bend, anchor it down good and tight, and repeat the process with the dubbing. So we're going to do that direct dub process again. Get that dubbing started, and I hold on to the clump as I start to wrap, kind of palming the bobbin. And I'm going to build this forward. I don't like to build up a big, huge dub body on any streamer, honestly, just because I don't think the hackle is really what the body of the fly is. This is just a little flash and a base for the hackle, so I don't want to build up a ton there. And I'll end just off the end of that dubbing, or the end of that wire, and then I'll select another Schlappen feather, sort of with the same characteristics. Little fluff at the bottom, strip a little end, and I'll catch this at the front edge of the body and anchor it down good and tight here. And I want a couple turns close together here at the front. You see how that fluff really stands up, and then I'll start to spiral wrap the feather, palmering back over the body, back to the base of the tail. And again, fluff that up, grab your wire, then I'm going to wrap my wire forward through my hackle, catching some of it now. Tie that off at the front, get a few tight turns on that, and then helicopter the end of that wire as well. You can come in with your buddy scissors and trim that out if you like. Kind of fluff that all back. Like to give it a squeeze that just sinks that stem down into the dubbing. Yeah, we're looking pretty good. This fly's got a ton of movement. I can tell that just with it sitting in the vise by the amount of volume that we've gotten out of it already. We really haven't put that much on it, but with those big Schlappen feathers, and this is a big fly. This is, this is not the biggest sized dudgeon I've ever seen for sure. I'd say this is more of a medium sized dudgeon, but a 2 and a 4 together. I think the usual version is 1/0 and a 2, so slightly bigger yet. But this is pretty big to start with. Now, this was sort of a optional thing here, is to put this Marabou overwing on top of here. So I'm going to take another one of those barred feathers and bundle it up into a bunch, like so. I'm going to lay it right on top here, catch it right at the base of the wing. I used a pinch wrap there just so that I didn't catch those Schlappen fibers that we'd wrapped. Kind of wet that down. You find with Marabou, anytime you're tying with Marabou, if you wet it down a little bit as you go, you'll get much better results. It's just not so much in your way. And then we're going to tie in 3 more strands of those same Sili legs. I'm going to tie these in at the center of their length, and what I like to do is catch them, let that roll to the far side, get 3 or 4 good tight turns, then pull the front end back to my near side. I just broke one off. These are got glitter in them, and that is a liability. Sometimes they will break, so we're going to get rid of those, and I'm going to grab 3 more. See, I'm not worried about it. I ain't worried about it. There's a lot in a package. So I'm going to grab 3 more, and we're going to try not to break them this time. Wet this all down, get them out of my way. Kelly's got a cool little trick that he uses a straw to hold this stuff out of the way. I don't have a straw. Maybe Kelly will bring me some when he comes here on December 7th to Charlie Slybox. Hey, have I mentioned that Kelly Galloup is coming to Charlie Slybox? Does it seem like we're excited? Because we all are, every one of us. So we've got those Sili legs tied on either side of the hook, right at the front there. Now I'm going to whip finish this 6/0 thread. And nip that out of there. And what I like to do is sort of bump this up a little bit, and I'll get you a better angle. I'm going to take my Dyna King Pro vise here and square it up horizontally. Let me raise this up so you got a better view. There we go. And this is going to allow me to turn the hook upside down and right side up and control this a little bit better. I'm going to take these silly legs and clip them back in my material springs just to hold them out of my way, like so. And at this point I'm going to come in with some 100 denier Simplify Nano Silk. And I'm just going to use white. Really doesn't matter what color Nano Silk you use when you're doing a deer hair head, because it's not going to show if you do it right. Anyway, so I'm going to start that thread just in behind those lead eyes, trim out my tag end, and this is where we get to the tricky part. And I watched Kelly's video several times, and he's got a little trick that, I'll be honest with you, just doesn't work very well for me, about how he does the collar. So I have sort of a variation on his theme about how I'm going to do the collar here. And I've got a beautiful piece of Sculpin olive late season deer from Josh Varner. This stuff is, if you haven't tied with Josh Varner's hair, just right now take all the deer hair you have and throw it away and buy some Josh Varner hair. This stuff is just beautiful, and every friggin' piece of it is perfect. It's actually sickening how nice this stuff is. But I'm going to take a pretty good size clump, and I know that's a terrible thing to say, because it's hard to gauge what I mean by a pretty good size clump, but a pretty good bunch of this olive deer hair that I've cut off. Now I have not cleaned this clump out yet, so I'm going to hold it by its tips, run my brush through it, clean out all the short hairs and underfur, and I'm going to put it in my hair stacker, and I've got a large size hair stacker here. I'm going to put it in my hair stacker, tamp it a few times so I get nice, clean, even tips. And then I'm going to move it from hand to hand and disrupt those tips so that I can do it again. There we go. All right, so I've got my clean stacked clump here. You can see how beautiful that hair has got. It looks good. Now what Kelly does is he cuts this off and ties it in like what I would say is an X caddis. He says that's how you do an elk hair caddis, but it doesn't really work very well with an elk hair caddis. I think what he means is more like an X caddis, and I'm not arguing that point, but doesn't work all that hot with elk hair. At any rate, he cuts these butt ends off fairly short and then ties this collar in and builds the head in front of it. What I found works a little better for me is to leave a little more length on those butt ends. And when I go to tie this in, I'm going to set it in on top. Kelly would tie this in with the butts very short. I'm going to bump this forward a little bit. I'm going to put one turn around it, two turns around it, and I'm going to hold onto the hair. I'm holding onto the hook, and I'm going to tighten the thread toward me. Put one more turn through there to stand those butt ends up. And that's going to build our collar. We want the collar all on top of the hook. We don't want any of it on the bottom. You can see how it stops along the sides, about midpoint down on each side. Then I'm going to rotate the hook upside down. No, I'm not. I got ahead of myself. I'm going to walk my thread through those butt ends and kind of just peel those back a bit. When I did it Kelly's way, and I think you might be able to see it if I hold this up, there's just a tiny little gap between the collar and the head right here. And it just doesn't sit well with me, and I'm sure I'm doing something wrong, and I'm sure Kelly Galloup, when he comes here to Charlie Slybox on December 7th, will clarify this for me. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you my workaround for that. So I'm going to stand that bunch of hair up. There we go. I'm going to turn the hook upside down, and I'm going to cut another clump of hair. And none of these clumps of hair need to be all that thick. You don't want this head too dense. I am guilty of making very dense deer hair heads just from, I enjoy tying with deer hair, so I like to pack a big bunch of it in there and sort of make that work. But in this case, I don't need very much, so I've got about a pencil diameter clump of hair. And on the bottom side of the hook, I'm going to lay this in. I'm going to put one turn over it, and I'll put another turn over it. And I'm going to pull straight down on the thread to flare that hair in place. And I'm not going to advance the thread. I'm going to leave it right there where it sits. Then I'll turn the hook back over, and I'll cut another clump of hair. So we've got the collar, and then we're going to have a flared bunch on the bottom of the hook and a flared bunch on top of the hook. So I want to clean all this out, And I cut the tips off these second bunches, just it makes it easier to work with. I don't need the tips in the way here. So I'm going to lay this bunch in and flare that down in place, put one more turn through it, and flare. Okay, in the interest of full disclosure, for some reason, as I was tying that last fly, it did not record from this point forward. So I'm going to just pick up like nothing happened. Like you can't even tell that this is a different fly, but I'd like to show you all the steps. So I'm going to now cross the thread. I flared one bunch with tips there at the back. I flared a bunch of butt ends on the bottom of the hook and another on the top of the hook. I'm now going to take the thread up and over the near eye to the front of the lead eyes, and I'll turn the hook upside down again, and I'm going to cut another clump of hair, again about the same size. Cut the tips off. I'll lay this in and put 2 turns around it. And flare that in place right there on the bottom. Turn my hook back over. And I'm going to finish off with the final bunch on the top. So again, about the same size. So we've got a bunch with the tips on it for the collar at the back. Total of 5 bunches. Tips on with the collar at the back. 1 bunch of butt ends flared on the bottom behind the eyes. 1 bunch flared on the top behind the eyes. 1 bunch flared in front of the eyes on the bottom. And this last bunch is in front of the eyes on the top. So I'm going to work my thread through there. You want to make sure you don't catch anything that you don't want to catch. I like to pinch from the bottom and just pull straight down on the thread. End up with kind of a big ball there. And then I'll work my fingers in from the front and just work the thread up behind the hook eye. Now on a big hair fly like this, I like to do a hand whip finish. I can just place the turns very precisely and keep a little better tension on them. So a 3-turn whip finish, and then I'll clip that thread out. And at this point I'm going to come in and start to trim the fly. And it's a shame that you didn't get to see the last one. I don't even know where he went. Where is he? Oh, here he is. Because gosh, he just came out beautifully. So let's see if I can do that again. Let's see how consistent I am. And the good news about this is I'm going to have 3 sex engines when I'm done. So I want to just kind of look through the head, make sure I don't have any what I call tie downs, which are just hair that's been trapped where it shouldn't have been. And invariably you'll have a few of those. You can kind of pull those out along the way. And I'm going to take a double-edged razor blade. And what I like to do is take a double-edged blade in the package, or in the wrapper, and break it in half. And then I'll take out half. And because I am really right-handed and not really left-handed, even though I tie left-handed, I'm going to hold the fly in my fingers here to trim this, and I'll try to hold it here where you can see it. But I'm going to start by cutting across the bottom just beyond the height of the lead eyes, back to the base of the collar. And I try to do that in a pretty clean sweep. You know, if you're going to err on the long side, you can always trim it a little shorter later. So we've got a flat head there across the bottom. And then to shape the head, I like to start by just kind of trimming up across the face of the bug. That just gives me a definite edge to work from. I'm going to take my blade and sort of get oriented to the hook eye and the lead eyes, and I want to get an angled wedge-shaped cut here up over the top of the fly, back to the base of the collar. Ideally don't want to cut off any of the collar. And this is actually fairly hard to do where I'm holding it where you can see it. I would generally be holding this down over the trash can, which is incidentally a dark background, makes it easier for me to see it. But you can see how I'm just sort of shaping the head with this blade in long smooth strokes to sort of keep out the mill marks. So we've got a pretty wide head across the top. Kind of clean up my shape here across the bottom. And you can be as picky as you like with this. I'm going to kind of cut back at a wedge shape into the head from each side. You know, when you're first learning to do these, you know, this is a hair head of any kind. You know, make shallow cuts. You can always trim some more. It's hard to keep them symmetrical. You know, until you've done a few of them and can sort of go in and just make the one cut you need to make. You know, one of my greatest achievements of all time was doing a Dave's Hopper video, which you can find on our site as well. And I got the Dave's Hopper head trimmed in like 4 swipes with the razor blade. That came from a lot of practice tying Dave's Hoppers. So that was no small feat. But, you know, I've always thought that like on stuff like this, if you do enough of them and are confident enough in your cuts, once you learn where they need to be, you can probably do this with just a few quick swipes and have the fly done and finished and beautiful. But I haven't done enough of these, and I just drank a Diet Coke that had a bunch of caffeine in it, so I'm a little hyped up. I'm excited to be here. Maybe not as excited as I'll be when Kelly Galloup is here on December 7th, but I'm still pretty excited. All right, we're getting where we want to be here. You can come in with your scissors and sort of fine-tune any edges, and just depending on how picky you want to be about the collar. I know you can't see some of this. I'm trying to hold it up where you can see it, but I got to see it too. I'm going to trim just some of these butt ends out of the back end of the collar. Kind of clean up the back edge of the head here. And we're getting there. You know, truth be told, on a streamer pattern like this that is going to be fished under the water, you don't want a terribly tightly packed head. Just takes longer to saturate that deer hair. They do saturate as you fish them, and it's not a bad idea. There's an old lefty cray tip to take the flies with the deer hair head. This was in relation to a muddler from back in the day, but what he would do is put them in a little Ziploc bag full of water so that they were sort of pre-soaked, which is not a bad idea if you think far enough ahead to do that kind of stuff. I can't say that I ever have, but I have put them in a fly cup on the side of the river and put a little water in that, you know, the little cups like you get here at Charlie's Fly Box. I have done that and soak the flies ahead of time just to get that head saturated so it sinks a little bit more quickly. A brand new dry deer hair fly will damn near float even on a sink tip line. It'll drag down eventually, but not a bad idea to get it a little more saturated. So you can see the level of my tism here as I shape this head into a big wedge is what we're looking for. And I'm actually pretty happy with this one too. Just clean up the last of these butt ends. Kind of clean up around the eyes. You know, this is like wood carving. What you want to do is trim away all the deer hair that is not forming a baitfish head. And therein lies the crux, is knowing which ones to trim away or how much of each one. And really the only way to learn that is to practice. And you screw a few of them up. It's just part of the game. So don't get too down on yourself if you screw a few up. Not the end of the world. Fish will still eat them. Fish are dumb. It's not the end of the world. I'm pretty happy there. I'm just trimming millimeters off now. It's super exciting to watch. I appreciate you staying with me. That one needs to go right there. Get out of there, sucker. infinitely happier now. All right, we're going to call that good so you don't get bored watching. But there is our sex dungeon head. I'm going to square this up in my vise conventionally just because the tail will hang a little better. If I set him in my vise just right here. So I'm going to trim these front legs about midway down the back hook. And the back legs I'm going to trim just short of the tail. And somewhere along the way there I lost my rubber band, but some little final trimming. Whew, doggy. Yeah. That one's coming for you, man. Came out pretty good. Not bad. Not bad for my third try of the day. And for that matter, my third try in maybe 10 years. Haven't tied one for a while, but I still got it. Maybe I should tell Kelly to stay home. Maybe I'll just tie for y'all. He's got better stories than I do, maybe. I don't know. I bet we have some pretty good stories. I think we're going to have a good time. Like I say, December 7th, Charlie Slybach's 20th anniversary party here at the shop. Big sales. Food, drinks, beer, wine, dancing girls, and Kelly friggin' Galloup. He'll be here tying. He's got a couple demos that we're going to do, and just a little time spent with KG. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. Mark a calendar. Come and see us on that day, and we'll all have a good time. Thanks for watching, you guys. You guys take care.